Good morning, baby. It's the Doug Rising Show. Well, the Doug Rising Show. Well, the Doug Rising Show. And I'm Doug Rice. Can you hear it? Can you hear it? I can't. I can't hear. I can't hear shit. I want horns. Good morning. Doug Rice. That's me. Welcome, one and all. Wake up. It's 7 a.m. I don't give a damn. That's right, folks. Good morning, and how are you doing? I am certainly about to ruin whatever maligned, misaligned you might have in your mind, I'm going to realign. I messed that up a little bit, but it's okay. Good morning, how are you? 7:01, 27th of September, 2023. And thank you for tuning in to see me. I am Doug Rice, the one, the only. I'm so damn lonely. I'm just joking. I do this every day, 7 o'clock, come what may. Yep. And then at noon on Sunday, I'm coming your way. That's right, folks, 6 days a week. You don't have to look far. You don't have to seek. I'll be here. Rain, sleet, snow, storm. I will keep your mental cockles warm. Okay, I'm going to stop that. All right. How we doing? And please pay attention to Twidware. TWID. Let me show you so you'll see. Look, folks, this is a legitimate sponsor. Okay? You go to twidware.com. You go to TWIDWEAR.com for 10% off all apparel and cosmetics using the promo code TDRS. Be sure to visit our sponsor there. Now, wasn't that nicely put in the air? I liked it too. But I need you folks to go buy some of this too. Now, listen. You're looking at the gear, okay? But there's also cosmetics. And you get 10% off if you put TDRS in the promo code at the end of your purchase. Just do it. Support this brother, this Negro, this Hebrew. He's been at this 13, 14, 15 years. He's put everything into this, his blood, sweat, and tears. Don't make me keep going. Just go to Twidware and remember the acronym TWID, folks. That's what I do. You know what Doug Rice does? He talks. That's what I do. Okay, so I want you to please go to twidware.com for 10% off all apparel and cosmetics. And remember, folks, this is some, and I mean professional level material. It is no joke. He has literally, I believe, put a new bar up on material. I mean, the material is thick. It is plush. You feel that it has value. And so I'll say it again. Go to twidware.com. Don't make me repeat I repeat myself anyway. All right, just go there. All right, we're done there. Now that's a plug, folks. That's, that's pitching for your dinner right there, and I think I did well. All right. So today, in today's topic, we're gonna go back to see forward. We're gonna delve into history, and it's gonna uncover just an interesting dynamic that I see as a pattern going on in this country regarding Negroes and our plight. They're paying a bit of particular attention, making sure that they don't forget to mention all the things that being a Negro brings in this country, and they're apologizing left and right. And it's starting to give me a fright. Now, look, the Scottsboro Boys, injustice in Alabama. Now, focus with me, folks, because this is bringing down the hammer. Okay. I almost thought I neglected to include the year that connected the information that we're about to hear. But then I gazed upon the opening and I saw, no, I didn't. They too did not include the year in here. Look at this, folks. The Scottsboro Boys, injustice in Alabama. And why am I bringing this up? Well, here's the deal. We had the brawl in Bama, and you know how that made all of us feel. And it seems that these southern states, filled with these Confederates, are always energized to be in our Negro eyes. I don't know, man. They seem hell-bent on just remaining. I just don't understand how this is happening. I mean, you understand my point. This was, as they say, 82 years before 2013. This is when they decided to pardon these young Negro men, these males, and we're going to go over the dynamics of this, because one of the interesting points they bring out is that this activity, this action, this occurrence was the touchstone, the catalyst for the modern day civil rights bowel movement that accomplished nothing except pour excrement upon the heads of Negroes, expecting anything less than them to be who the fuck they are. Now, this is going to be an interesting look. And again, all I'm doing is reading a book. I don't want anybody to think, again, I'm not some minister. I'm not going to say amen. I'm just going to read this. We're not going to pretend this didn't happen. It's up to us to look squarely in the eyes of the historical proof and bring the receipts and shout it from the roof. Scottsboro Boys, Injustice in Alabama by Jay Bellamy. And yes, this PDF I will provide to you upon request. All right, so here we go, folks. Now, here they are. This is who they are, the Scottsboro Boys. Now, I'm assuming, now look at these Negroes. Now, you need to understand the kind and the level of self-respect involved in being a Negro at this time in history. And I'm imagining that they knew their circumstances, and the white folks surrounding them left them no mystery. Look at those faces, stoic. Those are Negroes that have seen things. Those are Negroes that walk around with a different frame of mind regarding who they are and where they've come from. And those Negroes, unfortunately, are long gone. Now it's up to us to be those Negroes. Scottsboro Boys, Injustice in Alabama by Jay Bellamy, with scant media coverage and little fanfare. On November 22nd, 2023, a three-judge panel of the Alabama Board of Pardons and Paroles posthumously pardoned Haywood Patterson, Charlie Weems, and Andy Wright, three black men wrongly convicted of raping and assaulting two white women more than 82 years earlier. So you guys can do the math for me. You're in the chat. Do that math and see what year that's at. Because I'm not even gonna inspect it. I don't even want to connect it, only because I know it'll take me in a different place. And right now I got a little reading to do in my face. So let's do this. So here we are. Let's check out this photo. Now look at, I need you to understand the look on the brother's face. Look behind him and understand where he is in place of all those individuals that mean him no good. I bet he would leave if he certainly could. Although long deceased, the three were the last of a larger group to have their convictions cleared from the official record. Many believe the Scottsboro Boys, as they would become known, were the catalyst for the civil rights movement in the United States. This is their story. Scottsboro Boys case began on March 25th, 1931, when 9 young black men and boys hopped aboard a Southern Railway train in search of work in Memphis, Tennessee. The youngest were 13-year-olds Eugene Williams and Roy Wright. Apologies. The other 7 were Charlie Weems, 19, Andy Wright, Roy's brother, 19, Clarence Norris, 19, Haywood Patterson, 18, Olin Montgomery, 17, William Robinson, 17, and Ozzie Powell, 16. Patterson, Williams, and the Wright brothers traveled together. The others were Georgia natives unknown to each other. As the train passed through northern Alabama, a fight broke out between the young black men and a group of white youths. One of the white men, walking atop a tank car, stopped on the hand of Patterson, who was hanging from the side. After an exchange of angry words, the whites jumped off when the train slowed and began pummeling Patterson, the others with gravel before jumping back on. The fight began anew near Stevenson, Alabama, with the young black youths prevailing and throwing all but one of the white antagonists off the train. Meanwhile, several of those forced to jump off had run back to the Stevenson depot to accuse the black youths of assaulting them. A posse of armed men met the train when it pulled into the Paint Rock, Alabama station. They quickly boarded the train, rounded up the 9 black youths, and took them off to Scottsboro jail. Let's pause there. Now, let's focus on their typical modus operandi. It's what they do. They have a secret way of entrapping you. And it's an interesting dynamic. They blame, they accuse, they put forth all sorts of idiocy and then run and claim victim. It's a sinister move. And it has something to do with DARVO, deny, attack, reverse victim, and then offender. It's a tactic to redirect blame. And this is a more rudimentary and very rough version of this occurrence. You can understand in that time, in 1931, that these black men traveling together had no proclivity toward starting any problems in the state of Alabama. So we know who started the ruckus. And we also know who ran back and lied. Because that's what they do, they lie. I want to fit that Darvo in because Katrina, my wonderful moderator, she turned me on to that particular white tactic. Thank you, Katrina. You're wonderful. Here we go. All right, so that photo, I believe, is that photo they want to explain? They don't. They want to explain the next photos. It'll come in frame. Hold on. Boom. Maybe. All right. Also on board were 21-year-old Victoria Price and 17-year-old Ruby Bates. Bates was a minor with a history of prostitution, and Price had a questionable reputation, being described by one former neighbor in a defense affidavit as a common street prostitute of the lowest type. Both worked at a local cotton mill where they could depend on just a few days of work a month. It was for this reason, Price claimed, that she and Bates had gone to Chattanooga seeking new employment. Fearful of being charged with vagrancy due to their failure to purchase a train ticket, the two accused the prisoners of rape. Facing charges of assaulting 2 white women, the 9 young black men would now have to fight for their lives. Many whites of that place and time harbored extremely negative feelings about black men consorting in any way with white women. Would have been happy to see the youths lynched, saving the state the expense of a trial. Several hundred men gathered at the police station, but were turned back when the National Guard arrived to protect the prisoners. When Price identified only 6 of the young men as her attackers, the jail guard replied, "It stands to reason that the others had Miss Bates." What reason? White reason. Let me move this over. There we go. Sorry about that. On March 30th, an all-white jury handed down indictments charging the defendants with rape. Not only were the prisoners denied the opportunity to contact family, but they were given just 1 hour to consult with an attorney. Trouble for the Scottsboro Boys was only beginning. And so we see how they frame this. Folks, listen, this happened. This isn't to be swept under the rug of history for the coddling of the weak-minded whites that hear it and take it into their own souls. I don't have time for Ron DeSantis. I don't have time for Miss Huckabee. For God's sake, your folks did it. But you'd rather Negroes didn't read about this. Now, what do you think will become of this reading? I mean, none of you will suddenly be triggered into going into a mad rage, right? None of you will write a manifesto and ride 200-300 miles to murder whites as they shop on a Saturday as a result of me reading this. None of you will do that. But it seems that the opposite can be said for those that, well, anyway, let's continue. Did I go there? Yeah, I did. Prosecution's case relies on questionable testimony. After the defense agreed to divide the cases, the trial of Clarence Norris and Charlie Weems began on April 6th. Representing the state was Circuit Solicitor H.G. Bailey, and defending the prisoners were Miley C. Moody, a local attorney who hadn't tried a case in years, and Stephen R. Roddy, a real estate attorney with no experience in criminal law. Where the 69-year-old Moody was frequently prone to forgetfulness, Roddy often appeared incapacitated due to heavy drinking. Well, damn, the best legal representation that white people can't provide. Interesting, isn't it? The judge was Alfred E. Hawkins, who, according to defendant Clarence Norris, was a low-down bastard. Jesus. He let it be known that we were guilty and a trial was a waste of time and money for, well, you see the word there. There's no reason for me to get banned. The prosecution's case against Norris and Weems relied heavily on the testimony of Victoria Price, who was often evasive in her answers and pretended not to understand the question or flat out lied. In trying to cast doubt upon Price's credibility, the defense asked her if she had ever engaged in prostitution. When she claimed not to know what prostitution meant, she was asked, "Haven't you made it a practice to have intercourse with other men?" "No, sir, I absolutely haven't," she answered. Price also claimed that she and Bates had arrived in Chattanooga on March 21st and spent the evening at a boarding house. Price went on to say that she and Bates were hiding in a gondola car on the train when the fight broke out the following afternoon. She testified that after the white youths were thrown off, 6 of the defendants entered the car and raped her at knife point. I'm gonna pause right there. I need you to understand where you are, Negroes. I need you to understand who surrounds you on the daily. I need you to understand that these people procreated. They had children, okay? I need you to get through your mind that the products of 1931 were a direct result of the Confederacy being able to go back to their goddamned homes and not get hanged like every other goddamned traitor in every other fucking country in the fucking world. But no, Lincoln said, no, let them go. And just years later, this is what they have to show. And then you cascade 83 years and they want to apologize like they didn't fucking know. Okay, let's get to it. Lord have mercy, I don't know how I do it. Prosecutor Bailey then called on Dr. R.R. Bridges to describe any injuries Price might have sustained during the rape. Surprisingly, he has testified that he only found a few small bruises and scratches and that she was not lacerated at all. He further declared there was no blood on either victim and that neither had seemed particularly upset. When asked if either girl had been raped, the best he could offer was that it was possible. Dr. Marvin Lynch, who also examined Price and Bates, then testified that he could find no evidence of any internal violence coming from a rape. Now, pay attention to that, folks. These are physicians. Thank God they just did their damn job, because they did take a Hippocratic oath, but it meant nothing. Nope. Ruby Bates then took the witness stand, but she was not as brash and confident as Price. Price even made wisecracks at times during her testimony, mostly directed at defense attorney Roddy, that caused considerable laughter in the courtroom. Bates, however, seemed shy and nervous. Up to this point, she had spoken very little of the alleged rape, but she now supported her friend's story. She was, however, unable to identify any of her attackers. When the defense called defendant Charlie Weems to testify, he was very sure of himself and conducted himself well on the stand. He told how Haywood Patterson had come to him and told him of the fight with the white boys, and how he had agreed to help Patterson and his friends if the fight were to continue. He further claimed that although he had been part of the fight, he had raped no one, and that he had seen no woman on the train. There wasn't a soul in that car with me and Patterson except those Negroes and one white boy, he testified. Clarence Norris stunned all those in attendance when he announced during his testimony that every one of them, his co-descendants, had something to do with those girls after they put the white boys off the train. He claimed that a gang rape had indeed taken place, but he was the only one who did not participate. He said that Roy White held a knife on the woman while the others turns assaulting them. Well, let's pause for that cause, shall we? It's of no wonder or even account that this Negro didn't amount to much. You can imagine they get a few of them separated and tell them thus and such. So, probably terrified, and that's the reason he lied, and that Negro I want to buy. Next! Just kidding. Here we go. Now here we have, I want to show these, okay? Very interesting here. Let's take a look here. And this is photos, folks. This is it. This is the receipts we have. This is what they don't want your children to see. This is what they say is CRT. Ron DeSantis would be broken toward insanity. He would lose his mind right now. I need to send this to every school in the state. Here above, witness Victoria Price testifying during the April 1933 trial of Haywood Patterson, one of 9 men accused of rape. She claimed that 6 of the defendants entered the rail car and raped her at night. Did they now? Her testimony was later discredited. Was it now? Let's see below. Below, here, this clown. Here, Dr. R.R. Bridges testified with James J.R. Horton leaning forward. Presiding, he found no blood on either Victoria Price or Rudy Bates, and they sustained internal damage consistent with it. So they didn't find blood, and they didn't find anything that corroborated with the claim of rape. And I'm going to say again, folks, my boy, Antoine Anderson should be here. I bring receipts. These are the receipts. Let's continue. Norris later explained his testimony. We was scared, and I don't know what I said. They, the prison guard, told us if we didn't confess, they'd kill us, give us to the mob outside. When Roddy offered to enter a guilty plea in exchange for life sentences, Bailey refused to deal. See what they do when they have their hand on the wheel? Verdicts come from Weems, Norris as Patterson's trial begins. The trial of Haywood Patterson had already begun with Weems, Norris' verdict was announced. Hearing that both were found guilty, crowds gathered around the courthouse to cheer, really. Roddy complained that the cheers might bias the Patterson jury, but his request for mistrial was denied. It took only 3 hours for the jury to convict Patterson, a mere 15 days after their arrests. 5 of the 6 remaining defendants were also found guilty and sentenced to death. Justice in America for Negro. This happened in 1931. You think this is a joke? It's 2023. Where do you think these descendants might be? What do you think they're thinking as they walk past you every day? What do you think would happen if they could have their fucking way? How dare you grin and cheese and try to appease these malevolent beings? I don't understand Negroes. Not today. We need to be focusing on getting on our goddamned way. Was there anything done to the folks who told the lie? That's really a focus I have, and that's what's on my mind, you know? That's why we all know that there will be a reckoning put upon these folks. No one deserves enslavement more than these motherfuckers. I drift. Let's get back to it. I didn't mean to go there, but I did. Here we go. The lone exception was 13-year-old Roy White. His case ended in a hung jury when he was found guilty, but punishment could not be agreed on. Although the prosecution recommended a life sentence, 11 jurors held out for the death penalty of a 13-year-old Negro. These are the maleficent beings that fucking surround us, man. Y'all better understand, man. If the safety was off some of these Southerners. You want me to say it again? I'm gonna quit trying to pretend. Let me tell you something. If they didn't think anybody was coming to help you, if they thought there'd be no punishment for the crime, they would be at Negroes' asses chasing us down with crosses in no goddamn motherfucking time. And you all know it, because they sure as fuck show it. Y'all think this is a game, don't you? All this shit's still the same. These folks ain't gone nowhere, man. They've just become dormant, and they're coming alive. Donald Trump is energizing these clowns. And you're going to find that they're still around. All right, I'm good. Let's go. All right, that's interesting. 11-year-old. When the remaining juror refused to vote likewise, the court was forced to declare a mistrial. Wow. Saved his life by the skin of his teeth. A representative from the International Labor Defense, the legal arm of the Communist Party who attended the proceedings, recognized the potential case might provide in recruiting new members, especially African Americans, always ready to use Negroes, huh? Although the Communist Party supposedly represented the idea of racial equality for all, it was still perceived as a white man's organization, well, because it was. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the other arm of white supremacy, which first chose to stay out of the case for fear that the accused might actually be guilty, now recognize the likely innocence of the Scottsboro Nine. Did you fucking read that right there? Did that just roll through your mind? Let me read that again. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, which first chose to stay out of the case for fear that the accused might actually be guilty, you cowards. Now they recognize the likely innocence of the Scottsboro Nine. Well, thanks very much. Kiss my black behind. NAACP representatives went to Alabama to offer their services to appeal the verdicts. Well, did you now? I'm telling you. The NAACP argued that the communist involvement in the case would prejudice the jury. With support from the mothers of the boys, the ILD convinced the 9 young men to choose them as their legal representatives. With July 10th set as the execution date, the ILD sprang into action and managed to secure a stay of execution until the cases could be reviewed by the Alabama Supreme Court. Well. In March 1932, well, let's see what happened here. The Alabama Supreme Court upheld all but one of the original convictions. Eugene Williams was the lone exception. The court ruled that he never should have been tried as an adult, so the 13-year-old was spared. The ILD lawyer Joseph Brodsky argued that the remaining defendants had been unfairly judged because there were no blacks on the jury, but the court ruled that the state had the right to fix qualifications for jurors. Isn't this? Set it up! When the ILD turned to the Supreme Court of the United States for release, of course, the court announced in November that the defendants had received inadequate counsel and therefore would be granted due trial. Okay, a little progress. Second trial of Haywood Patterson began on March 27, 1933, with Samuel Leibowitz, a New York lawyer hired in part for his amazing record of 77 acquittals and 1 hung jury and 78 murder trials. He now appears as lead defense counsel. Okay. The accuser changes her testimony as Patterson trial moves ahead. Victoria Price was called to the stand on April 3rd. After a short examination by the state, Leibowitz wasted no time going on the attack. He brought up Price's reputation before painting her as a liar by pointing out her untruths of a previous testimony. Her next witness testified to having seen Price engage in sexual activity 2 days before the alleged rape. His next witness. Leibowitz suggested that this might account for a small amount of semen found during her examination. Dr. Bridges was then called to the stand to restate his previous testimony that there was no blood found on either woman and that neither Price or Bates sustained internal damage consistent with rape. When Ori Dobbins, a farmer who claimed to have seen the defendants pull Price and Bates back on the train as they attempted to escape, was called to witness stand, Leibowitz quickly discredited him. Knowing that both women were wearing men's overalls when they were taken from the train, Leibowitz asked how it was that Dobbin knew it was a woman the defendants had pulled back on board. She was wearing woman's clothes, he answered. When Judge James Horton asked if it could have been overalls they were wearing, Dobbins was even more specific and said, no, sir, a dress. The biggest surprise came when Ruby Bates entered the courtroom. After disappearing from public view following the first trial, some thought she might have been kidnapped or worse. Now testifying for the defense, she said that her conscience had gotten the better of her and that she was there to tell the truth. There was no rape, she said. And it was Price's idea to accuse the defendants of the crime in order to keep from being arrested themselves. Attorney General Thomas Knight, however, pounded away on cross-examination until Bates admitted the ILD had paid her for her clothes and a trip back to Alabama. She had been in hiding in New York, suggesting she was nothing more than a paid witness for the defense. Before we move forward, I want to see Western Utah. So here we have Judge James Horton received numerous messages, some threatening during the Patterson trial. On April 6, 1933, telegram from the District Committee International Labor Defense in Detroit urged a change of trial venue to Birmingham. Wow. Let's read it. Judge James Horton, Decatur, Alabama. We vigorously protest against the attempt to lynch Scottsboro Boys and defense attorney Lewitz's shameful demonstration barring of Negroes from jury. Okay, stop. We demand immediate full protection for safety of defendants and then defense counsel. We further demand dismissal of Jim Crow jury and release of innocent boys. And of course, that works swimmingly, right? We'll find out. Here we go. All right, so to learn more, okay, to give you something to learn more, y'all can freeze on that. And let's go to the next page. She either lied during the first trial, night implied, or she was lying now. Therefore, her testimony could not be believed. In close summation, the assistant prosecutor asked the jury to show them that Alabama justice cannot be bought and sold with Jew money from New York. That was powerful. Very, 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 very prejudicial. Leibowitz angrily demanded a mistrial, he declared. Be declared, but Judge Horton denied the motion. On April 9th, the jury returned with the verdict. Haywood Patterson guilty as charged. Later learned that it took only 5 minutes for the jury to reach a decision. The defense immediately filed a motion with Judge Horton for a new trial. While awaiting the judge's decision, the ILD planned to march on Washington, D.C. in support of the Scottsboro Boys for early May. So let's pause there, if we may. So what do we see there? All the stops were pulled out for these gentlemen, for these innocent Negro men. A victim of white pride. You know, just not wanting to pay for a ticket is what took these Negroes' lives. I need you to understand the lengths to which they've gone. And it's, it's more than just wrong. And you know, this is 1933, so don't you tell me that this was a long time ago, because we all know this is the Doug Rice show. So stop. This is 2023. That's 90 years ago. And you can best believe that the children of these yahoos are still around, as I said so. Moving on, we're moving. Okay, we're moving. All right, on May 8th, 4,000 marchers converged on Washington. Among them was Ruby Bates, who marched alongside Janie Patterson, Haywood Patterson's mother. When the marchers reached the White House, they were disappointed by President Franklin Roosevelt's refusal to meet with him. Instead, a petition signed by 145,000 people called for presidential intervention was handed to the White House Appointments Secretary. A letter presented along with this petition called for the president to use his good office to influence the granting of a desired change of venue to a largely populated center, and further urged him to issue a new declaration of civil, political, and economic justice and freedom in the authentic voice of the chief executive of the nation, aiming at the future strict enforcement of the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment to the federal Constitution for the purpose of safeguarding the life, liberty, and prosperity, and guaranteeing the pursuit of happiness. 12 million Black Americans. Oh, it's so wonderful. Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it just beautiful? Wow. Let me tell you something, folks. I'm going to pause. Let me just say this. Roosevelt, before he checked out, he was on somewhat of a decent trajectory. The vice president that Roosevelt chose was not Truman. Truman got in through white shenanigans, okay? And that's how he got in. So between this time, when he obviously paid him no mind, and just before he died, Roosevelt tried to install a vice president that felt differently than most of these other beings that we're seeing. So I'll say that just as a cap on his legacy. You know, Roosevelt, I don't know, he was a different breed of cat, still racist, and we'll just leave it at that. Let's move on. Judge Horton risks his career, orders new trial for Patterson. Well, damn. At considerable risk to his professional career, Judge Horton, believing that Price was lying about the rapes, announced on June 22nd that he was setting aside the verdict and or ordering a new trial for Patterson. In his decision, he pointed out several discrepancies between Price's story and the evidence presented. While Price claimed to have been hit on the head with the butt end of a gun during the supposed rape, the doctors found no sign of a head injury. She also stated that the doctors had seen her blood-soaked coat, but Judge Horton wondered why neither had mentioned it during their testimony. Price also testified that at the time of the rape, she was lying in a car full of chert, or crushed gravel, causing the sharp, jagged rocks to dig into her back. However, despite finding a few bruises in that location, the doctors found no visible lacerations. The judge also questioned why none of the 7 boys were called to testify. In conclusion, he wrote that history had proven that women of the character shown in this case are prone for selfish reasons to make false accusations both of rape and insult upon the slightest provocation for ulterior motives. So in other words, white women lie on you. But I mean, really, Judge? I mean, way to soften it up. Okay. Way to soften up the blow of accountability. I dig it, Let's see how the rest of it went. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Okay, here we see White House, the letter that they submitted to the White House. We know what it said. He further declared that this tendency on the part of the women shows that they are predisposed to make false accusations upon any occasion whereby their selfish ends may be gained. Judge Horton failed to win re-election the following year. Oh, did he now? What a surprise to hear. Using his political connections, Attorney General Knight managed to have Patterson's third trial, which began that November, transferred to the court of Judge William Callahan. Callahan's prejudice was immediately noticeable, as he overruled nearly every defense objection and denied Leibovitz the opportunity to question Price's character and credibility. It was his opinion, and he openly shared it with the jury, that a white woman would never consent to sex with a black man. Really? Okay. I bet that judge stayed mad every day, because he knew that shit wasn't true, what he said. It was his opinion, and he openly shared it. I like that. That was way out. Hayward Patterson would later say of Callahan, he couldn't get us to the chair fast enough. Boy, let me tell you. Appearing for the prosecution was Orville Gilley, the lone white man allowed to remain, oh Lord, it's way up there, on the train after the others were thrown off. At his retrial, and later at Norris's, he claimed that the attacks on Price and Bates ended only when he begged the black youths to stop before they killed the 2 white women. To the dismay of the defense, Ruby Bates had moved to New York and refused to return to Alabama after receiving letters suggesting she should be lynched along with the defendants. You see how this is rolling? Very interesting. When both Patterson and Norris were found guilty, the remaining trials were delayed until the appeals process for both could be exhausted. In 1934, the special assistant to the U.S. Attorney General reported to President Roosevelt that he found the testimony of both Gilley and Price to be filled with inconsistencies, and that if the Scottsboro Boys continued to face execution, it was his advice that the president intervene. Roosevelt then met with incoming Alabama Governor David Bibb Graves at Warm Springs, Georgia, and asked him to do all he could to clear it up. The governor promised to look into the matter and later backed out of the plan to pardon prisoners when they refused to acknowledge any guilt. So let me address the seriousness with which these white men took these Negroes' lives, and the looseness with which they took their lives. White House flooded with mail. FDR refuses to get involved. Ruling that the paperwork in Patterson's trial had not been submitted in time, the Alabama State Supreme Court refused to review the case. The two ILD officials then foolishly contacted Victoria Price and attempted to bribe her into changing her story. After first agreeing to do so, she then changed her mind and contacted the police. The ILD representatives arrived in Alabama carrying $1,500 in cash for Price, and they were immediately arrested. Angered by the actions of the ILD, Leibowitz and the Communist Party officials reached a compromise. He would represent Clarence Norris, who still believed in him, while ILD attorneys would speak for Patterson, Haywood Patterson. Now, folks, do we need to pick this one apart? I mean, do we really need to get into this one? Not really. So you used the tactics of the Jews. This isn't me just speaking loose. This is the truth. The history is right there. Listen, I almost believe there's a two-pronged effort to stop Negroes from looking into history. It doesn't just expose these Gentile Europeans, it also removes from Jews any mystery. Let's continue. All right, the Supreme Court wrote that the defendants had been denied his 14th Amendment right of equal protection under the law. Let's see. Correspondents began arriving at the White House shortly after the arrests of the Scottsboro Boys. One particular poignant yell was received from 15-year-old Pearl Blunkin in December 1933. She wrote, "Christmas is coming. It is a night of happiness and joy, yet in 7 little homes sit 7 mothers who will sit alone, mourning and brooding for their sons." She then asked somewhat naively, why can't these boys be given a fair trial in the northern states where Negroes are considered as we are? Negroes! That's what we are considered. But by 1935, much of the public was growing frustrated with Roosevelt for his failure to intervene. Mr. Ernest Pierce wrote, President addressing him as Franklin Deflated Roosevelt, saying, all the way down the historical line, there have been so-called great men who viewed from the more acute angle of greater distance proved to be damned fools. Are you awake enough to know that Tom Mooney, convicted of the San Francisco bombing in 1916, and the Scottsboro Boys are still suffering the injustice of our criminal courts? What could be more criminal than your failure to act? Even Andy and Roy Wright wrote to the president asking him to bring their case to a conclusion, as there's the sole support for their mother and sister. Eleanor Roosevelt herself was not immune from the pressure. A Miss Davis of Indianapolis appealed to the First Lady's motherly instincts, writing, you as a mother can easily understand just how the mothers of those boys feel. The New Deal Girls Social Club in New York asked her to use your influence with the president in behalf of the Scottsboro Boys. Well, let me stop you there, ladies and gentlemen. There were no influence that Miss Roosevelt could have used with Mr. Roosevelt. She was a lesbian. I almost feel that her motherly instincts went away along with that proclivity. And I wanted to stop just long enough just to say that, but let's see what she did and where her head's at. Reverend Pearl Burnett of Flint, Michigan, inquired about the president's refusal to meet with a contingent who had come to the White House. I do not believe President Roosevelt would deliberately refuse to see anyone, Burnett wrote, adding, these boys have been punished enough by their 3 years of incarceration. Despite public sentiment that was clearly on the side of the Scottsboro Boys, Roosevelt chose to stay out of the fray, believing that this was a state issue, not a federal one. On April 1st, 1935, the Supreme Court decided Norris v. Alabama and Patterson v. Alabama. Leibowitz had argued that the verdict in the Norris trial should be overturned because of the exclusion of black residents from the jury rolls in Alabama prevented the defendant from receiving a fair trial from a jury of his peers. For Patterson, the ILD's Walter Pollock contended that a mere technicality about paperwork should not preclude the defendant from receiving a new trial. The court agreed with both arguments and sent the cases back to Alabama. In the Norris decision, they wrote that the defendant had been denied his 14th Amendment right of equal protection under the law, while in Patterson's case, they simply saw the unfairness of allowing him to be executed while at the same time granting Norris a new trial. The fourth trial of Haywood Patterson began on January 21st, 1936. The ILD, the NAACP, the American Civil Liberties Union, the League for Industrial Democracy, and the Methodist Federation for Social Services, now working together on behalf of the Scottsboro Boys. With the ILD no longer in sole control of the defense, Leibowitz had agreed to return. However, because of the harsh comments he made about Alabama, not to mention his religion and his affiliation with communists, the Jewish lawyer from New York was now considered a liability. Leibowitz, whose first concern was always his clients, agreed to take on an advisory role and accepted Clarence Watts, a Southern attorney with local ties to the community, as lead counsel for the defense. Life takes different turns for the Scottsboro Boys. From the witness stand, Patterson declared not only was he innocent of rape, but he also claimed to have seen neither woman on the train that day. During cross-examination, prosecutor Melvin C. Hudson, the local solicitor, simply mocked Patterson's answers and treated him with utter contempt throughout the questioning. Hudson then called Obie Golden, the guard at Kilby Prison, to testify to a supposed confession Patterson had made 2 years earlier. When asked on cross-examination why he never told anyone of this in the past, Golden was unprepared and had no answer. In summation, Hudson made an impassioned plea for the jury to protect the womanhood of Alabama, all balled up in that hooker. Okay, if Patterson were allowed to go free, he told them, women would have to buckle six-shooters to their middles. Dear God. Watts then took his turn for the defense and asked the jury to consider the evidence carefully to administer fair justice for the defendant. When the jury returned with a guilty verdict, Patterson was given a sentence of 75 years rather than the death penalty the prosecution had hoped for. The first time in state history a black man had escaped the death penalty after being convicted of raping a white woman. Ladies and gentlemen, savor the victory. Savor the victory with me. Wasn't that a victorious story for him? I mean, listen, folks, do you not understand this happened? You get that this occurred. I mean, I'm bringing you the evidence. You don't have to take my word. Next, let's just keep going. Okay. Clarence Norris's trial began nearly a year and a half later. And for the first time, Judge Callahan allowed the defense to call witnesses to testify to Victoria Price's character. Despite 2 deputy sheriffs from Huntsville, Alabama, telling the jury that they would not believe her under oath, and Dr. Bridges' earlier testimony, he had died the previous March, regarding the lack of any serious injury found on Price, the jury returned with a guilty verdict and once again sentenced Norris to death. This proved too much for Watts to handle, and he fell ill. Leibowitz was once again left to represent the remaining defendants. The next 2 trials ended with Andy Wright receiving a 99-year sentence and Charlie Weems getting 75 years. Ozzie Powell, who was seriously wounded after being shot in the head while attempting to escape the previous year, was next brought into the courtroom. It was then announced that rape charges against Powell were being dropped and that he would instead plead guilty to assaulting a police deputy during his escape attempt. State Attorney General Thomas Lawson then shocked everyone in the courtroom when he announced that all charges against Olin Montgomery, Willie Robertson, Eugene Williams, and Roy Wright were being dropped as well. In 1943, Charlie Weems was paroled, followed by both Clarence Norris and Andy Wright in 1944. Norris, however, was returned to jail after violating the conditions of his parole by leaving the state without permission. 2 years later, he was paroled and once again fled. In 1973, after spending a number of years in New York, Norris contacted the Alabama's governor's office to see if he was still wanted for his last skip. When told that he was, oh my God, Norris enlisted the NAACP to help him obtain a pardon. In October of 1976, after a media blitz and public relations campaign launched by the NAACP, the state of Alabama granted Norris his pardon. Ozzie Powell, who's never the same after being shot in the head, was released in 1946. Andy Wright, like Norris, violated his parole by leaving Montgomery, Alabama without permission. He was captured the following year and paroled for good in 1950. In 1951, he was accused of raping a 13-year-old girl, the daughter of his girlfriend in New York, who was acquitted by an all-white jury. I had to pause for that cause. Roy White, the youngest of the Scottsboro Boys, joined the military and after his release from prison, served until 1959. Upon returning home, believing his wife had been unfaithful to him, Wright took both of their lives in a murder-suicide. Although they each suffered from various problems on the outside, Willie Robertson, Eugene Williams, Olin Montgomery, Ozzie Powell, and Charlie Weems eventually settled into everyday society and started new lives for themselves. Life behind bars was not an easy one for Haywood Patterson. Not especially liked by any of his co-defendants, he found this to be the case as well with many of the prisoners and guards at Atmore Prison near Mobile, Alabama. In fact, one guard had paid another prisoner to kill Patterson, but he miraculously survived despite being stabbed 20 times. Because of this and other abuses suffered at the hands of prison guards, he twice attempted to escape, the second attempt being a successful one. On July 17, 1947, Patterson was working on a prison farm when he and several other inmates simply ran off from their assigned duties. After swimming through snake-infested creeks and evading pursuing dogs, Haywood reached Atlanta, Georgia, before eventually arriving at his sister's home in Detroit. He was arrested there in 1950 after killing a man in a bathroom brawl. 2 years later, Haywood Patterson died at the age of 39. As scholar David Pitts has remarked, the Scottsboro case resulted in a more wide-reaching interpretation of the 14th Amendment guarantee of equal protection under the law. Whereas in most cases, whites could feel confident about the protection of their 14th Amendment rights guaranteeing them a fair trial, blacks, especially those in the South of lower financial and economic status, could not always feel as secure. As stated earlier, the Alabama Supreme Court had ruled that the state had the right to fix qualifications for jurors, preventing the defendants from being judged by a jury of their peers. The Scottsboro Boys deserve the same protection under the law that the Constitution grants to all Americans, and they didn't always get it. And there, my friends, is Jay Bellamy, gentleman who wrote this. Appreciate you tuning in to hear this. It's important that we do. And if you liked what we did, please use the edifices below, the links below, the structures they put in place to try to keep this show in this space. Cash App is probably better used, but understand this, folks. Do what you choose. I appreciate your ear. My name's Doug Rice. It's 8:01 in the morning, the 27th of September. We reviewed the Scottsboro Boys, An Injustice in Alabama. It is a PDF that I will send you for free, but of course we'll also send you if you support me. Thank you, Katrina. Thank you, and Anderson. I don't know if they're here. I don't, but I better shout out to them just in case so they hear. All right, folks, I gotta go. All right, I hope you enjoy the show. I feel good. Okay, tomorrow we got some other good stuff going on too. I'm going to read over some stuff, but I'll tell you about that later. Hey, you have a good day, folks. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. Hey, Katrina, grab him. Hey, come here. Look, it's hump day. I know it's Wednesday, right? All right? Is it Wednesday? It's Wednesday, right? Is it Wednesday? Yeah, it's Wednesday, September 27th. Yeah. Some of you are at work, going to work, driving to work. Some of you listen to me. I know. Right now, you ain't grinning. I know you're not. There's nothing to smile about. You saw it, right? But you're going to get up to that door, and I can bet and best for sure you're going to forget about this. And that'd be a serious diss. So I'm going to remind you just one more time. You understand. You didn't just hear a rhyme. You heard some history. Okay? We brought receipts. All right? So all you got to do is rinse, wash, and repeat. When you get up there today, all up in their faces, do me a favor, I'm going to say it anyway. Get that goddamn grin off your faces. You may go now.